Welcome back to our second hour of day two. We are live. We have a guest with us. You may recall it's here yesterday. We'd like to welcome back Margaret Millet. Margaret, welcome back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great to be with you again.
Mark, we haven't seen you in hours. Thank you for coming back. We appreciate it. We know lunch is starting right now, so we're taking you away from lunch for just a couple hours, but then we'll send you on your way. We had Margaret back on the show because Margaret was sharing some interesting information with us before we went live around Ukraine and some things and some insights that Margaret has. And we'd love to know things that you can share and some of your thoughts on Ukraine and what's happening there from a business continuity standpoint.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well, I work for Uber Technologies, and we do have operations in the Ukraine. And I think, like most people, we had hoped that all the talks that had been taking place at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, would not have brought us to the current situation that we're in with the people of Ukraine. And our hearts go out to everybody who is dealing with this, whether it's directly on the ground in the Ukraine or family or friends that are there. I will say this: Uber had started to evaluate the situation before it got to today's point, and started to really work with what was currently in place for an evacuation plan for our travel folks, because we do have people that travel a lot for the globe. We also had evaluated our kidnapping scenarios because, again, we are in parts of the world where our executives travel, and so we have various types of plans that are in place. And so it was bringing together those types of plans and then getting together with what I call the key infrastructure people that would help support a situation like this, primarily HR also, to take a look at what we could offer the employees as well as the contractors that we have that are in the Ukraine, and what we could do to help offer them with assistance of relocating to other parts of Europe if they had family or friends that they wanted to relocate to. So we were able to get some of our employees out in advance. And then once the events actually unfolded to the invasion, we were going back and offering assistance to them, saying, what would you like to do based on the day-to-day situation? We were able to get a few more people out. Some people chose to stay once the ask of the Ukrainian government for men of a certain age to stay were put in place. And so, again, what we've been doing with our management team is providing them updates on what's happening. Every day there is a situation report that comes out about the Ukraine that is shared so that they can continue to get updates on what is transpiring. And I do believe that we do have a few employees that were in other parts of the world that have decided to go back to the Ukraine, since it's their home country, to offer assistance with the situation that's taking place even as we speak here and now. So that's what's been happening with my current employer that has operations. And I know that we're evaluating, again, day by day, what's happening in the surrounding countries that we have operations, just in case this Russia invades into other countries, because nobody knows what tomorrow will bring with the situation.
Are there any communication challenges considering what's going on? Just trying to get a hold of some of these people, is that proving to be a challenge? And you don't have to get into specific details.
Yes, like any situation, and I'm not saying anything that's not unique. You read the news, you hear about it, that depending on what's happening, that the communication channels have been shut down, or people have not had opportunities to go get their phones charged. So we have been using our emergency notification tool to be in touch with them. And so that has proved to be helpful. But again, it's not always going to be successful based on the fact if you have no power in your phone, then we're not able to reach you. But we have been successful with hearing from the employees at least every few days based on where they're at, and also email. We've been using that because they might not have phone power, but then they have their laptops so that they've been able to reach them.
You mentioned that you're looking at, your operations in adjacent countries. And I love that, because some organizations right now are just saying, well, we don't have anything in Ukraine, but maybe they're in Moldova or Belarus, or companies that are adjacent. And I think a lot of those organizations are just going to wait until things are too late and be reactive, which I think is a typical response, unfortunately, in our profession. So I love that your organization is looking at, where are our assets and our people and our resources in adjacent countries?
I think it's important because, again, nobody knows what's going to be next. And part of it is starting to have those communications to let people know that the company is there for them. Because I always go back to it. When you really look at an organization, the most important asset that a company has are their people. And it's really key that you start and understand what is there and how many people you might be looking at and what can we do to offer them assistance, and also just figuring out what's going to be needed, because it could be a chance of like they might not have the right paperwork. So do we have the luxury of time to work with them today to get them to places? If they want to go to another country, what's the entry requirements there? Because some countries still do require visas. What can they do? So I think it's important that organizations start and do the right thing for their employees in advance while you still have the luxury of time.
Well, it's an interesting point because I've heard it a couple of times here. People are the key to everything, and it sounds like what you're doing is really putting the people first.
Right.
Because a lot of companies they focus on the plan and assume the people are okay and are there available to do what needs to get done. But in this case, obviously with Ukraine, it's not that clear cut.
Right. And then, the other thing that Uber did is they set up on the application that when you go for a ride, you can make a donation, so that Uber is trying to also be part of helping the relief situation in the Ukraine through the mobile apps as well.
You also made another interesting point about the nuance of your response. A lot of organizations just assume, if they even factor in people into their business continuity, that everyone's all going to do the same thing. But you mentioned there's people who are leaving the area. You also have people coming back to the area. Like, these are all individuals at the end of the day making individual decisions.
Yes.
So how are you logistically keeping track of everybody and how things change with them, with their family, politically, with war? That's like a lot of different variables.
So one thing that we, I'll say this, it's a small number of people that are part of our Ukraine workforce. And so, and the other surrounding countries, it's relatively small. It's not some of our larger offices that have thousands of employees.
Okay.
So in that sense, we have been able to manage it. And there's a tracker that's been set up to say, these are the people and this is what's happening. And we also make sure that we are hearing from them. They're tracking that we have been hearing from you, because they want to make sure there's the consistency there. Because if all of a sudden we're not hearing from you, then we have that concern of, have we got a concern that we might not be able to reach them, and therefore we've got to figure out whether they are okay or what other circumstances do we need to invoke to try and help them if we've gone from good to a different situation.
That's a lot. That's fantastic. That's so important.
Quite the challenge. Yeah.
Well, we have a really great resources in our EMEA team, and they are staffed 24/7 to monitor the situation. And so again, I think that it's great that we have this rhythm built in as to what we're doing with the employees, because again, there's that set time of day that we're going to reach out to you. So again, if they know that maybe they're not going to be available, say 9 to 11 local time, that they can reach out to us before or after, and that they know that Uber is there for them. And that I think that's really important, because whether it be the situation that's here, or we have an earthquake, or for example, we've got hurricane season starting on the East Coast, it's like you want to know your employer's there to help support you.
Well, great. Thank you for joining us, because that really adds some food for thought. And I hope people that are listening, some leaders, it's not simple just sending out communications. There's obviously a lot of different things that are happening, a lot of pieces in play right now, and different considerations to make under these circumstances.
You're so right, Alex. And I think the other thing that I want to just communicate to people, it doesn't have to be an event that's this long going. Hopefully it'll be over shorter soon. But I also just look at it, it's whether it's that or it's a hurricane, because I have worked enough hurricanes in my career, or earthquakes, where it's not just, hey, it happened today, and therefore I find out whether you're okay. It's the continuing circumstances, because you know that the hurricane's going to pass through, but what's the aftermath of that, of you and your community and your family? Because the other thing is if you've got a gaping hole in your living room, you're not going to be able to necessarily work, because you're going to be more concerned on getting tarps and contractors in, and you probably aren't going to have your internet service. And with COVID, what was also really tricky is the go-to places weren't available. You couldn't go to Starbucks, you couldn't go to the library. So then how are you going to then get out and get yourself rejuiced with electricity to power up your phone and your laptop. So that's where it's not just the day of, it's the aftermath, and making sure that once you know that everything is, what I'll say, back to normal, that your employees are back safe and sound, whether they be in their homes or back in the office.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you,
I
gentlemen.
appreciate having you come back again.
Thank you. Good
Now-
luck with the rest of the day.
A different gift today. Yesterday I gave you the other book. This time you get the testing and what is it? Testing disaster recovery and business continuity books.
I'm glad I brought
And
my larger suitcase to get everything
Yeah.
home.
Every time you come on, you get a book, apparently. So
But there's something else I want to say, and I'm joined with James and Margaret today because this is the 200th episode of the YouTube channel. That
Wow.
you were part
Wow.
of.
I
So
feel very special.
thank you to both of you for sharing your time with me today to make that milestone.
Wow.
And I know
Congratulations.
both of you have been a part of that through multiple shows. So I want to personally thank both of you for that.
Thank you, Alex. Congratulations on the
congratulations,
milestone.
Alex. That's a huge accomplishment.
See, I told you I had a special
That's
announcement.
exciting.
And you did.
I personally timed everything with all the shows. James has seen my list of shows that are already scheduled to air. And I purposely cut back so that I could have one of these hours here at Continuity Insights to be the 200th episode.
I am
so I could
honored.
share it with people. So that's my big announcement that I mentioned earlier on. So thank you both for being a part of that.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to mark the book, episode 200. So you
I will treasure this. And also put in a plug that how could I purchase this if I were not a guest on this session today?
Amazon.
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 Okay.
Always
You heard it
Amazon.
straight from the
Everything's
man's lips.
Amazon.
Amazon. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Good luck with the rest of the sessions.
Thanks,
Great.
Margaret.
Thanks, Margaret. Let's make sure we don't
Yeah,
trip
trip
or
on the
unplug
wires or
ourselves
unplug.
here.
Yeah, I don't want to do that for you
There
guys.
we go. There we go.
200 episodes.
200 episodes.
That's a
Right
lot of
now.
episodes.
If you include the Voice America shows, I'm just below 500.
All right, we're going to get you to 1,000 then. We actually have our next guest, surprise guest, popping in now.
Come on over.
Very professional how we do things. We're a work in progress.
There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm wonderful.
Do you want to introduce yourself to the three people who don't know who you are?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracey Rice, and I am Senior Vice President at Fusion Risk Management.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks
Tracy.
for joining us, Tracy.
Pleasure to be here.
Now,
Pleasure
tell
to
us
be here.
about you were on a panel, moderated a panel, spoke yesterday, all the above. What was your panel about?
Yeah. So I spoke alongside Mitzi Harlor from Marriott International and also Cheyene Marling from BC Management. And we actually co-developed a presentation along with Alice Kaltenmark.
Oh, Alice, yes.
And Alice couldn't make the show. And so the three of us represented all the content. And, it was a really, really great presentation. It was very interactive. It was very engaging. It was around innovative perspectives on leadership. And so what the four of us wanted to share was some of the ups and downs of our careers, what
Okay.
we've learned along the ways, and, kind of taking a step back and thinking about what we could share with everyone else. We don't have all the solutions. That would be wonderful, but we don't.
Mhm.
But what we do have is we have, we've watched in those shows before. We've come across these different challenges, and if we could go back and do it again, how would we improve? And also some advice, some snippets, some takeaways on taking pause, taking a moment, thinking about your career, no matter where you are in it. 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, getting ready for retirement. There's a lot to think about. So it was really fun. The audience was very engaged. I had a lot of fun.
I think that's an interesting point. That sometimes to reflect on your career, you have to take a step back to
Yeah.
be able to take a step forward.
Yeah.
2 steps forward.
Well, what's interesting is that very few of us do that. Guilty.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I would
one
say
of the
that too.
things I really appreciate about Cheyenne Marling. She has challenged me really at every point of my career in a good way
Yeah.
to stop and think, well, where are you trying to get to? But then she always asks me, why are you
Yeah.
trying to get there? Do you have a why behind things? And I hate when she's always right. And I'm like, no, I don't have a why. Now I have to,
We got
now
that
I
on
have to think
film.
about it. Absolutely.
I'm going to tell her you said
Is
that.
there something from your career that you'd be willing to share about the audience that maybe helped you pause?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I focused on that were
Okay.
specific to my experiences, that I would be happy to share. The first one being this concept of mentor mentee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I reflect back on my career, I've had a ton of amazing mentors, both male and female,
Yep.
who have had a great influence not only on my career path but also on my life.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a one-stop shop. I don't think that one mentor for your entire life or your career is the way
correct.
to go. And I think finding the right mentor at the right time, or maybe even just for the right situation, can be really beneficial as long as you're willing to be open to feedback. And I think that the best mentor-mentee relationships are when, as a mentee, you're truly ask for advice and help, but you're open to hearing it.
Yes.
And there are times in my life where I think that I got really good advice and I was not open to really taking that on board. And then there are other pivotal moments in my career where I think I got solid guidance and feedback that have kind of led me to where I am today. So I encourage everyone, be a mentor. Also, remember, you're still a mentee your entire life.
Yes.
You can
Yeah.
do both.
Yes.
And you have always been very passionate about formal mentor programs within the industry, and that's so
Yeah.
true. And I encourage those of us older than 20 to be mentees as well. You
Yeah.
learn. I was in a marketing cohort with a person who's very big on social media and has done very successful things marketing wise. She's 25. And I was the oldest one in the group by far,
Yeah.
but you learn just about things that I hadn't thought about. And I think that's so
Yeah.
important to have mentors at different ages, different backgrounds, and outside the industry too. I think one of the mistakes I see a lot of people in our profession have, they only have mentors that are business continuity
That's a good
practitioners,
point.
and that's such a niche within a niche. Like, as the profession
Mm-hmm.
grows, if you want your career to grow, if you only have that one silo, I think you're really limiting your career and who you are as a person.
One of the things that I mentioned yesterday was some mentoring advice that I got way back at the beginning of my career. And I shared that one of my greatest fears was public speaking. And what does Tracey do for a living?
Public speaking.
Yeah.
A lot of public speaking. And I still get nervous and I still overthink things and think of a swan in a lake and super smooth, super polished, and inside.
The knees are going up like
Oh,
this.
okay. And I admit that I feel like that during this interview, getting on stage, doing presentations. But some of the best advice I ever got when I worked at Stroll Systems was from Karen Stroll. And she said, nobody in the audience wants to sit and watch you fret, panic, lose your words, sweat, get nervous. That's not comfortable for them.
No.
If you know your content really, really well, then you have to use all your personality, charm. If you're an extrovert, be an extrovert. If you're an introvert, be an introvert. But be yourself and deliver it in a way where you're actually entertaining them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the best advice I ever got. Stop trying to be part of like the mold.
Exactly.
Okay. If you want to crack a joke and make it fun and that relaxes you, crack a joke and make it fun.
at your own expense a lot of the times, because people aren't laughing at you, they're actually laughing with you
Yeah.
at like, oh my god, that person had an experience, and it gets them thinking, I had that same kind of experience, and it gets everyone laughing, and it brings you closer together.
It was really interesting to watch the faces when I said my greatest fear was public speaking. People are like, no, it wasn't. You're just making that
I
up.
think we just had that same look.
We did.
But it's true. And so, imagine reflecting back, if someone has said to me, well, in your 30s and 40s, this is the role you will have. No. And I really love it and I embrace it. And I got a lot of help along the way to overcome the panic and the challenges, and also to polish up the skills. So the journey's interesting. You don't always know where the destination is.
No,
One
I
of the
mean, if you
things-
would
oh,
have
go ahead.
told me 5 years ago that I'd be broadcasting live with Tracey and Alex right now, I would say, you're crazy. What are you talking about? So certainly,
I would have said the same thing.
life has twists and turns. Absolutely.
One of the things you mentioned that I thought was rather interesting is being open to feedback.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure many of us watching and listening, and even the three of us, have been in experiences where people ask for feedback, but as soon as you start to give it in a positive way, you can tell they really didn't want that feedback. They didn't want to hear it. They're kind of going through emotion. I have to ask for feedback on this, but I'm not open to hearing what it might be, and take any feedback, even when it's positive, as something negative.
I think you have to do a dance. Okay, as someone, I've managed some really interesting teams. Okay, I've managed very techie software development teams, and also much more kind of on the customer facing, customer success side. And so I think some of it is a dance. When someone asks for feedback, giving them hard and fast feedback can be a devastating blow to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to do a little bit of a dance, and you really have to be honest. But nobody wants to be sat in the hot seat and get a whole lot of criticism thrown at them. What they really would be more helpful is describing potentially a better way of maybe framing what the message they were trying to get across, the potential solution of approaching a problem in a different way. Something as simple as someone doesn't turn up for meetings or work on time every day, right? You could easily say, work starts at 8:30 and you got to be here. Okay. Or you could say, we have a whole team here for a team meeting at 8:30 in the morning. And, you're letting the team down by not being here, right? How can we work this out so that you can be, in that meeting and productive and helping the team along? So I think it's how you frame the feedback can help soften the blow in many circumstances.
And draw them forward to be a part of that team, rather than, if they're already nervous and don't have that confidence, they'll pull away.
I think you find with many people who are either defensive or closed off, I think probably underneath all those layers, there's probably a lack of confidence, which maybe comes out of the caged animal type of thing. And I think, building trust is a huge factor in any of our jobs, whether we're customer facing or whether we're talking about our personal relationships, or, trust is key.
Yes.
Trust is key.
Absolutely. So you've been to several conferences the last few months. I've seen you all around the country. Is there a theme that you've seen, or something that's surprising that you've seen now that we're back on the road and
back
traveling
on the road again? So it's interesting. There's definitely a high energy vibe. Are we feeling it? I mean,
Yes. I
Okay.
am.
It's fun.
it is
Yeah.
fun, and I think that that people are being more thoughtful about their time, how they spend their time, where they spend their time. There's a lot of people have been starved of networking and communication. And this is really an opportunity. Sit down, have lunch. Hey, I'm Tracey. This is what I do. What does your program look like? And that face-to-face interaction, you just can't get it through a Zoom call or a webinar, and those motions. I think it got us through a very hard time.
Yeah.
But you really cannot replace that in-person experience.
Yeah, even for me, my anxiety attack at the airport the other day, it's still nice to be here and see people and be able to talk, face to face with yourself and James and other people that have come here.
Yeah.
Because introvert or not, I have missed it. I my dog could talk. My goodness, the things that he would say.
Your dog has become codependent, though. He's been showing me sad pictures of his dog the last few days.
I want to see the dog.
The dog hasn't been left alone for 2.5 years.
So something that we talked about in the presentation yesterday was networking.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I challenged everyone in the presentation yesterday to leave, go to the networking reception, and introduce themselves to at least 3 strangers.
Did you introduce
Have
yourself
you
to
done
3
that?
strangers?
I always introduce myself to strangers. It's a really bad habit. So it was really fun. It was fun talking about it, but the reaction has also been quite fun.
Okay.
Because I've had some folks come up and say, hey, I did it. I introduced myself to 5 people last night. And the whole concept here is that's really hard. And we think we're networking because we're at an event and we're having a glass of wine and we're chatting. But normally we're hanging out with our friends.
Correct.
We're in the safe zones.
Yes.
Okay. And we may meet others through our friends, right? Through conversations. But what I was really saying was, come on, you paid to attend an amazing conference with amazing content and industry leaders.
Yeah.
Go do it. It's not that hard. Put your hand out, introduce yourselves, and who knows where that could lead to.
We're actually, you can't see it on camera, but off camera, we're actually seeing that play out right now in real time. So the Continuity Insights is serving lunch. There's people at tables right in front of us, and you can see some
Strangers.
people are on their phones looking down. Some people
Yeah.
are engaging in conversation. And to your point, some people are with the people that they've known for a long time. So we're seeing it play out right now.
There's
I
really
didn't attend your
Go ahead.
session, but yesterday when I came down for lunch, I purposely sat at a table with other people I didn't know, just so I could say hello, and just got to know, where's everyone from? Why are you here? What brought you here? And it did make a difference because I saw a couple of those people this morning, and I got to say, hey, how's it going? Which I probably wouldn't have done.
That was hard yesterday because it is hard. It's even hard for me who's dishing out the instructions. But you just demonstrated how today you were able to say, oh, hey.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's really just breaking the ice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think one last question for you, and then we'll let you have lunch. Would love to know either the next big thing that you're working on or something that you're really passionate about right now in our industry or with Fusion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm passionate about community. I think that many years ago, if I'd said that, people would have been like, what's that all about? But I think now it's a differentiator in the industry. So I consider myself a connector. Okay. I want to learn as much as I can about you and your program and what makes you successful. And I want to truly understand that. And then I want to be able to take that and say, James, you got to go talk to Alex. I mean, he's doing some great things. Exchange ideas. Together, we're stronger. And so from a community aspect, years ago, I feel like all these great companies were working in silos, trying to do great things. Now we're uniting. We're coming together, and there's strength in that type of community. So it's my priority to connect companies, to share great ideas, and to move the industry forward in terms of innovation and creativity by building out that community.
And so if people want to connect with you or learn more about that, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, if you don't see me in person,
Yes. If they're
okay.
in
Now,
the-
if you see me in person, please at Continuity Insights, please stop me, extend your hand, introduce me, give me a fist bump, however you would like. But connect to me on LinkedIn. So I believe my LinkedIn is Tracey Forbes Rice, because that's got my maiden name in there.
Yeah.
Shoot me a message, and I'd be happy to connect with you, set up a call, start exchanging information and ideas.
Great. But before I let you go, James, on your side of the screen, we've got a couple of comments. Is there any question here that maybe
boy.
Tracey can answer?
Some
Yeah,
of
boy.
My eyes aren't good enough to see that.
Yeah, I just had an eye exam last week, and the doctor said I was old, which was obvious. So we have Lisa saying some of my favorite thought leaders. A great point about expanding your mentor network outside of your industry. And then how do you, I guess we'll kick this to Tracey, how do you discern between good feedback and criticism? Thank you, Lisa.
Ah,
Yeah, that's actually, well, it's an excellent example of what I think I was trying to say there. So criticism, I don't believe is proactive or helpful to anyone,
Okay.
because criticism is that really hard blow, and a hard blow without, and here's how maybe you want to improve upon that action or that task. So it's not really addressing any type of recommendation or solution. That's criticism. That's like you did a really, really crappy job there, but not explaining why, and not
I hope you never say that to me after a presentation.
but it's not explaining why, and it's not explaining or giving any helpful advice on how that could have been so much better. So I don't like criticism. Constructive criticism, I think, is a better way to go. But feedback, yeah, help me be better.
well, great. Thank you very much, Tracey.
Thank
We're going
you
to let
very
you go
much.
for lunch, but
Yeah.
before you go,
We have a few gifts as
Oh
a
my
thank
goodness.
you.
I do
Gifts?
not want to take anything home. So a
Bedtime
copy
reading.
of Testing and Disaster Recovery book
Oh,
and
fantastic.
Planning Performing Business Impact Assessment.
Thank
I
you.
have a copy of that.
Thank you for the
very much.
gifts.
This is a notebook. I'm sure you know Rena Singh, who runs the Resilience
I do know
Pod,
Rena, yes.
the Women in Resilience Committee. This is a Resilient by Design notebook of hers from us.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both
Thank
so
you for
much.
sharing your
joining
time.
us.
It's been a
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
Great.
And thank you to our viewers.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Have a great
Tracey.
day. Cheers.
Make sure no one trips. There we go. There we go. I think we have.
We do. We have another guest coming up.
We do.
Very
Oh, my
excited.
goodness.
Yes, we do. Pay attention, Alex.
Well, you've got the notes in front of you today.
Well, you don't have. Thank you for joining us, Ray.
Yeah.
If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ray Holloman. Glad to be here.
Good to meet you, Ray.
Nice to meet
Alex, I haven't met you before. So
Ray, I met Ray. We are both on the Disaster Recovery Journal's editorial advisory board, and we spent some time together at DRJ Spring at the lovely Coronado. I had to give Ray a map so we all get lost.
That
at
place
that
is
hotel.
massive. Was not expecting it.
So I was hoping if you'd be willing, you have, I think, a really interesting topic that you're going to be speaking about at Continuity Insights tomorrow morning.
Yes.
And I'd love if you're willing, if you could give us a preview about that or what led you to want to share about that topic.
Yeah, so my topic is about reflections of the National Prison State bombing that happened in 2020. And really what made me want to speak about this is that it was super impactful to me personally, professionally, and just looking at how kind of businesses, government, and kind of like even my own personal response to it is like, even as a continuity professional, there's something that I was even able to learn from it. But it really was just really interesting to see how this bombing was not on anybody's risk cards. And that was really the thing. No one thought about, their central office being downtown Nashville, and that, an RV blowing up would take down the entire office, and that all the services that would be impacted became impacted. So I was just like, I thought it was super interesting. I love to talk about things that I find interesting, and maybe somebody else will find that it's interesting too.
So you mentioned in James' introduction and yourself the personal part. What was the personal part? Without giving too much away in case you're talking about it tomorrow. But.
Yeah, the personal part is just that, the biggest thing was that it was AT&T, so I had an AT&T cell phone, which means I was completely out of contact. And I had AT&T internet at my house. So nobody could get in contact with me. So the thing is that like I didn't know the bombing had happened. The bombing happened at 6 a.m. that morning. I didn't find out till like 6 p.m. that afternoon when I went to go turn the TV on because I finally looked at my router and was like, this is a weird day for somebody to put a change through on Christmas Day.
Exactly.
And so that's why I was like, this is a weird time for somebody to put a change through. So I'm like, internet's not working. So I'm like, I had an antenna on my TV. And so like I flipped and like, oh, a bombing has happened. That is why I cannot connect to the internet anymore and why my cell phone isn't working. And so it was just an interesting way to wake up and think about like, no one can get in contact with me yet. And like when I finally went down the road to the public library that had free Wi-Fi outside, I had all these messages from work trying to get a hold of me and no one could because I didn't have any service.
Wait, Christmas Day, that was the bombing?
Yes.
And you went down to the public library?
Yes.
Did they open the library
they have
as a result of it? Or
no, they had free Wi-Fi outside of it. And so
okay.
So they had Wi-Fi that anybody could connect to. So there were just tons of people that would come, just check their cell phone, see if there was any messages, and then you would go back home. So we did that for a couple of days till Wi-Fi was restored, till internet was restored.
What were those conversations like with other people?
Yeah, they were just like, everybody was just trying to figure out what was going on. How are you getting news? Taking down the 911 number because 911 was impacted. And so you could not dial 911 for about 60 surrounding counties of Nashville.
Wow.
And so they had a lot of them had a secondary line, but you had to know what that number was. And so like it didn't help me at all because I didn't have any kind of service. But a lot of people were going. The people did the library is by the city of White House where I live, and so the city of White House changed their electronic sign to run the numbers all throughout the day so people could have it. So that was part of their emergency plan, and so that's what they did. And so they had people that ended up having to work on Christmas Day because this bombing had happened, and they were trying to make sure that people could still be in contact and get 911 help if they needed it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. That's a big assumption that we make in our field is that during an event or after an event, you'll be able to communicate with people. Mm-hmm. But as we've all seen and as you experience, the 911 gets overloaded, telecom circuits get overloaded, and you're out of communication completely. And Alex and I have spoken a lot about this show throughout the last few months as more and more of us work from home. Mm-hmm. If that home router goes down, and to your point, you're one of our colleagues in the profession, you had no internet, you had no phone. How do you do your job and manage an incident with zero comms?
Exactly. And so that was a lot of thinking that, I did personally. It was like, okay, do I need to get a hotspot of another provider so that I can have just redundancy in my house? Yeah. Do me and my partner need to split our cell phones? So like she has one carrier, I have another one, just so that way we can stay in contact with each other and let them be the backups for each other, because that's kind of the thing. And that was Christmas Day, so not a lot of things were open. So like typically I would have gone to the library and just worked there, but they were closed, and so they weren't opening up. And where I live, like the next closest thing, I would have had to go basically to one of our hospitals because they still had Wi-Fi. It was about the closest thing, and that's still 30 minutes away from my house. If I had been needed to be called in for that event. Luckily enough, people still had service in Nashville that they didn't need me at that time, but I was giving them updates of who they needed to contact. I was like, I'll be back at 8 p.m. Leave me any questions that you have, and I will answer them then. And that's kind of how we just did it for a couple of days.
And to your point, having an incident happen early in the morning on a holiday, I know I myself, I wasn't on the news and Twitter at 6 a.m. on Christmas. I didn't find out in probably 2 or 3 p.m. that afternoon, because you just we all, during national holidays or big events, we kind of unplug from the news cycle.
I think it's interesting you mentioned that 911 wasn't available, because I think there's a general assumption everywhere. If there's any number that's available, it'll be 911.
Yeah, and to your point, where I live, I don't know the non-emergency or secondary number, so now I have to look that up and put that in my phone. I have
Yeah,
911.
you've got
Then
me
I-
thinking when I go back to Canada,
Exactly.
I'm going to see if there's an alternate.
Exactly. And the thing is that it was not even their non-emergency number. It was a different number that they had, which was basically, I guess, however they routed back that 911 to their district. That's the number you had to call
Okay.
directly. But I was like, people don't know this information. So it was really, I was like, I just found it to be really fascinating. And so I've talked a lot about it. And so I'm really excited to get other people thinking about this, because it's like thinking about what are those non-emergency numbers? Do you have access to that? Is that in your plan? A lot of times, because that impacted such a wide area. Do you have that documented somewhere?
Yeah.
And I think further in what you're saying, that with this incident, that there may have been a lot of assumptions out there
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know we even had,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I mentioned one with 911, but a whole bunch of other things you didn't know you had. How many people didn't know that the library had a general Wi-Fi? You can
Exactly.
stand by the window of the building and get a signal.
Yeah, and the only reason I knew that, I'd lived up there probably a year at this point, but that was one of the features when I signed up for my library card up there.
Interesting.
They mentioned that they have Wi-Fi that reaches out into the parking lot.
Okay.
And they did a lot of promotion. I will say that was one thing that COVID did help with, is that the library did do a lot of promotion of the Wi-Fi being in the parking lot so that students could come if they needed to do their work. And so that was something that they really put that out into the community really heavy, because this was still, in the midst of COVID when we're thinking about this as well. So that really helped that kind of promotion. But knowing where those free Wi-Fi spots are at, in your area, not necessarily thinking of like malls and airports, but like those smaller areas. And so a lot of libraries, I found out, actually have a lot of Wi-Fi that reach out to. They got a lot of grants to do that through COVID to help with education purposes.
Interesting. Now I'm kind of curious, is this your first conference of the year? And if so, how are you feeling about?
This is my second conference.
Oh, really?
Because I was at DRJ Spring.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. But I'm liking being back in person. I'm like, because you just get to meet with people and interact in like a different way and see people. I get to see people that I haven't seen in a while, or meet new people. And so the virtual conferences were great, but I didn't feel like you got to do the same type of interactions with people, like just the random stopping and seeing somebody in the hallway. You kind of had to know somebody, or if they listened to me speak, they would connect with me. But this has been like being able to get back in front of people.
That's good. Well, I'm really interested. See, you got me thinking when I go home at all those assumptions, 911.
He's going to go find out where his nearest library is.
Right, that has
I
Wi-Fi.
actually know where that is,
All right,
but now I
and do
want to
they
know if
have
it's got
Wi-Fi
Wi-Fi.
in the
Exactly.
parking lot?
If my signal goes down in Canada, can I go to that library, which is only 5 minutes away?
Right.
Will it have a signal to get a message? Because like your situation, if my phone goes down, everything goes down.
Mm-hmm.
The provider I have is for everything as well. They go down. We'll be in the same position you were.
So last question for you. We're a day and a half. We're halfway through this conference. We're at the midpoint. Is there a session that had an impact on you or something? Have you heard a speaker say something that really kind of jumped out at you in the first day and a half?
Yeah, I was listening to a speaker yesterday, and they were talking about storytelling and how to really sell your story. And that was
me.
That was really, really impactful to me, because I was just like, sometimes it's just, like you get to being in DR a lot of times, it becomes a little difficult. People are like, you're just doom and gloom all the time. But I'm like, no, I mean, I am. Yes, that is correct. But also it's all about that preparedness, but it's like, how do you sell it? And so with the company that I've been with, historically, we've been able to use Katrina. That's been everybody's feel-good story.
Okay.
Because we had a really awesome response in 2004 with Katrina. So that's what they've written books about it and everything. But I'm like, okay, we need to also think about what are these other impacts? Like, that was a really person response. What is our technological response? Because that's more likely going to be our disaster. And so selling that story going forward.
Great.
Very interesting. Well, thank you for being on the show. We'll let you get back to the conference.
Awesome.
We have a few gifts for you for being in the hot seat.
Awesome.
Yep. I don't want to take anything home, so I'm giving you a copy of Testing Disaster Recovery and Business Continuity Plans and Planning and Performing BIA.
Awesome.
So those are few. They are autographed as well.
This is a Resilient by Design notebook from our good friend Rena Singh, who runs the Resilience Pod.
Awesome. Thank y'all.
So thank you again for
Yeah,
joining us.
Yeah,
We
this is
appreciate
great.
it. We look forward to
Giving
your
us some food for
session
thought, too.
Awesome.
tomorrow. Everyone go check your local library and see if you get
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
everyone.
Alex
Challenge
was
you.
furiously
Everybody.
taking notes.
I'm going to check that out.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Ray.
All right,
Have a
thanks,
great day.
Ray. All right, Alex, believe it or not, we have reached the end
Of our second,
of
our
segment 2, and we have not yet run out of material, which I was excited about. I was a little worried today, like what happens if we burn through all our material in the first 10 minutes.
I
But
think we only touched 2.
we've only
Two
touched
topics.
2 of the 9 topics. More guests to come. We're going to take a break. I'm going to do some recon on the dessert table for lunch, I'll fully admit. And we will see everyone in a few minutes. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your comments and questions. Keep them coming, and we'll be
Yes.
back at the top of the hour.
We will. We'll see you then. Stay prepared, everybody. There we go.